This episode is brought to you by DistroKid.
I just feel like we are surrounded in this world by bullshit.
So how can you know what's real and what's not? Science versus. That's how. We answer questions like, does anti-aging skincare actually work? And what is your true personality type? And to answer these questions, we don't use opinions. We dive into the scientific studies, talk to the experts, and put it in a podcast that I know you are gonna love. Listen to Science Versus on Spotify.
Hey everybody, today's guest is guitarist and lead vocalist John Kastner from the Montreal, Quebec punk rock band Doughboys. Together we take a deep dive into the writing, recording, and inspiration behind the hit single Shine, taken from their 1993 major label debut album, Crush. Man, what a trip down memory lane, mixed with a ton of connected dots to people and punk rock legends that I met with a connection to these guys. Doughboys are my all-time favorite band. I kind of fanboyed on John a bit, but he took it well. And heck, I figured if there was ever a time to tell him what his band and songs mean to me, it was right here, right now, on this podcast. Shine is the sound of four hungry punk rockers in a room, microphones placed accordingly, the band rocking out together, and a tape machine capturing all the ruckus. Producer Daniel Ray was a punk rock minimalist, preferring this approach rather than a full-on, bloated production. This song sounds awesome 31 years later. Questions I've had bottled up for over 3 decades answered. And I learned a few things that blew my mind, like this song was inspired by a member of the rock band Hole? What? Or that the record was mixed in fellow Canadian Bryan Adams' basement? Again, what? So worth the wait though. I enjoyed every second of this and I hope you do too. So without any further ado, let's talk about one of my favorite songs from my favorite band.
Hey, hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a podcast. Hey, hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a podcast. Hey, hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a podcast. Hey, hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a podcast.
Well, hey John, how's it going?
Good. Long time no see.
Long time no see. I think the last time I saw you was at, what's the festival in Montreal you had organized? It wasn't Heavy Montreal.
Oh, no. It was when I was doing that French one way in the country, Rock Fest.
There you go. Yeah, the Rock Fest. And I'm still running into you periodically to this day. I always love to see you. And I've never fanboy really on my show. It's been 4 years as of this past June that we've had Chris DeMakes a podcast going. I know I've probably told you this back in the day. You may or may not remember, but Doughboys is my favorite band. And this is amazing that I'm here to talk to you. And all I ask is if you can give me a couple minutes, I want to take a little trip for you and the listeners down memory lane of how I got introduced to the Doughboys. And hopefully this, my timeline here all makes sense. I was recently at the Punk Rock Museum, John, out in Las Vegas, out there for the 3rd time giving guided tours.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere, someone asked me this time. I haven't been asked this question in a minute. They said, well, what's your favorite band? And in the late 80s, early 90s, my answer was quickly the Doughboys. I loved it because outside of the punk circles, you probably weren't going to know who the Doughboys were. They were kind of this obscure punk band from Montreal, at least to me, from where I lived in Florida. And I got this cassette of Home Again that Vinny, Less Than Jake's first drummer, Vinny gave me this tape. I didn't know anything about the band. It just said Doughboys on it. And I fell in love with this. This was the fall of 1989 in Port Charlotte, Florida. I would go to baseball games. I was still playing baseball at that time, listening to the records in my headphones. And you quickly became my favorite band. And there was a number of years where people would ask me that question. And I wouldn't say the Doughboys anymore because it was like, what? They were outside of the punk circle. And I said it to this person and they said, "Oh, who are they?" And I said, and I explained who you were. And recently on the podcast, Chris and I, my partner, were talking about, I said it in an episode that Doughboys are my favorite band. Well, wouldn't you know it, in our Facebook group for the show, we get a message the next day. This guy's like, "How'd I miss these guys?" And he had a screenshot of Tearing Away from Spotify, which I thought was awesome. Prior to Doughboys, John, you were in the Asexuals, punk legends from Montreal. I didn't know that till later, but your first record, Whatever, came out in 1987. And here's where we start connecting those dots.
Yeah, that was the first Doughboys record, came out in 87, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they asked us to put a bunch of stuff in that punk rock museum too, but at the time I was in the middle of moving all my stuff back from Canada. I just was never able to get them stuff, but eventually, if they still want it, I can send them stuff, but they hounded me for a good year to put stuff in there. I just never got around to sending anything.
Well, this is where I said I'm going to start connecting the dots. The producer, the guy that recorded the record, was named Steve Kravac, who, for Less Than Jake fans, he ended up working with us on Hello Rockview and Borders and Boundaries. Borders and Boundaries, Bill and Stefan from The Descendants recorded the album Home Again, which ended up working later on with Bill and Stefan. Of course, they've done Less Than Jake records. That Home Again cassette, John, was a 10th generation cassette. Told you I listened to it at baseball games. I couldn't find any Doughboys records where I lived in Port Charlotte, Florida. You guys were on Restless Records, a subsidiary of Enigma, which was a weird label at the time. Kind of, they were more associated with maybe metal bands and things. And fast forward to the summer of 91, I go to the University of Florida in Gainesville. I find Whatever on CD. I find Happy Accidents, the next record. I'm like a kid in a candy store. When Up Turns to Down comes out, your EP, I went down. This was 1 week shy of my 18th birthday. I saw you guys in 7 Seconds and a little band called Last to Go, which featured a young Chris Wallard, who ended up being in Hot Water Music. They opened the show that night. That was at Janice Landing, 1 week shy of my 18th birthday, when you guys came out and John Cummins said, "Hi, we're the Doughboys from Montreal, Quebec." I cried. I got tears in my eyes because I got to see these mythical creatures in my head that were on this cassette. I didn't know what you guys looked like. I had been looking for a video, John, on 120 Minutes every week on MTV because somebody told me that you guys had shot a video for Deep End. I couldn't find it. Well, late July of 93, this advanced cassette of Crush is at School Kids Records in Gainesville. And I get this thing and I popped it into Rogers 280Z and we cruised out of the parking lot and I'm like, oh my God, just here's the band that I love with all my heart, my favorite band. And they got a producer. They sound amazing because I wasn't really into the sound on Happy Accidents.
No, me neither.
And Shine was the lead single from your A&M Records major label debut, Crush, from 1993, written by yourself and Darren Brown, better known as Wiz, from UK indie punk legends Mega City 4. Sadly, we lost Wiz in 2006. Shine was song number 1 out of 12 on the record. Crush was released on Tuesday, August 3rd, 1993. First day buyer. My father's birthday is on August 6th. That night, listening again to that advanced cassette, Less Than Jake played a show in Daytona that night at a punk club called Black Eyed Susans. The record was produced by Daniel Ray, Ramones, Misfits, Gangrene, etc., and mixed by fellow Canadian Dave Ogilvy. Late September 93, John, I took acid for the first time in Orlando, Florida. It was a Sunday night. 120 Minutes was on that night. Took it with some friends. And the LSD was kicking in, man. The carpet was starting to do a couple waves on me. And unbeknownst to me, John, for 2 years, I had searched high and low to see you guys on video. And there is the premiere of Shine. And then the chorus of Shine, I think you guys were green screened, the fireworks come on.
Yeah.
Do you know what that did to this 18-year-old kid? Do you know what that did to me? I watched the video today, John, and I went back to sitting on that carpet. And I almost had a flashback there.
Well, yeah, because it has that kaleidoscope thing, when you look into one of those kaleidoscopes.
Yes.
So I could see being on acid, that would really tweak your little melon there.
I'm almost done here gushing. We're going to get into the song. That's what we're here for. I know I'm hitting you with a lot, but a couple more things. Saturday, November 6th, 1993. I went to the Florida Theater to see you guys and the Buzzcocks play. And that was the second time that I had seen the band. And we got there that night, and I went up to who was ever selling T-shirts. And I said, hey, man, I'm here. Is John here? And I was with Roger. I said, we want to smoke him out. And he said, 1 second. He ran to the back. You come up. And I mean, I'm just like, I'm shaking. We get back. We hang out with you. You were cool. I remember John Cummins coming up to me, and he wasn't asking for anything except if I knew who Harry Cruz was. Harry was like this. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Harry Cruz was like this hippie writer. I think he was a professor at the University of Florida. He was kind of like this, mythical Gainesville guy. I might have seen him cruising around campus, and I just remember sitting there going, "Okay, this just got weird." I didn't know people in punk bands were this intellectual as John Cummings was. Wiz, who co-wrote "Shine" with you, John, he joined for the final Doughboys album "Turn Me On" in 1996. I saw you at Metropolis, the old Metropolis, in Montreal on the Caffeine Nation tour with Descendants. I'll never forget Carl sitting there and saying, "Oh yeah," to somebody. He said, "John Kay will be here soon." And I froze. I just knew. I knew you were coming, and I was like blown away again. Since then, John has gone on to a lot of things. You formed All Systems Go with Frank and Mark from Big Drill Car. We played some stuff in Europe with you. I remember doing a Warped Tour with you guys. Yeah. And since then, you've been managing bands, organizing festivals, doing songs for TV and movie soundtracks. And the Doughboys last played, it was a club warm-up show followed by 2 arena opening shows for Foo Fighters. That was in 2011. In Toronto and in Montreal. And for the rest of my life, if somebody asks me who my favorite band is, it's your band, the Doughboys. And I know that was really long-winded, but thank you for listening.
No, I appreciate it. We always, I always had a special thing with Florida, right? Like growing up in Montreal, like we used to go to Florida on vacation. And then, on the first Asexuals tour, that's what it was. We drove we played CBGB's, and then we drove right from New York down to Miami, and we played in like the basement of like a hotel where the whole hotel was like boarded up, except for they had a club in the basement.
Was that Washington Square or the Cameo?
No, I think it was way before those places, wasn't it? It was
really?
83, 82.
That was before my time. Yeah, that was
about 82, 83. Miami Beach then was just all boarded up.
Yeah.
It was a weird, everybody had split. It was all gone. And I remember that your football team was like in the Super Bowl, I think, the night that we played. So it was a real weird, everybody was walking around with these like green things on their heads and stuff. It was just a weird scene.
Yeah.
I remember we went and sat on the beach, and all those buildings were all boarded up, and this place we were playing was boarded up, except for the club in the basement was open.
Yeah, and that's amazing that you say that, because when I was out of the museum, I was pointing to these bands that had 10 years on me, guys like you, guys like Descendants that were out there. You guys played all the horrible places before we had to play them. You weeded out a lot of those. This promoter is going to screw you over. This club's terrible. This club doesn't have a good PA. And by the time it came around, we had a chance.
Those first few times down to Florida were insane, man. Like the first or second time the Asexuals went, we had these skinheads that followed us around, and they would wait to a few songs into the set, and then they would bust in and start beating everybody up.
Yeah, I know.
And I remember the only reason they didn't beat us up is because I went and smoked ice with them. I don't even know what that was. I guess it was speed or something. And they somehow thought I was cool, so they wouldn't beat the band up, but they'd beat everybody that was at the show and chase them all out of the club.
Gosh.
We also played in Tampa. We played like this, like a punk house, and they had lost the lease on the house. So they were having one last party. And so we set up in the living room, and before we even started playing, like they went in and started smashing all the glass and breaking all the windows. And we started flipping out. And there was also a rumor that there was a African-American priest that had lived across the street that had been killed. So we packed up our gear and threw it in the van and got out of there as the cops were coming screaming down the street. Like Florida was just like other level insane.
It was. I mean, even in the early 90s when we were cutting our teeth, it was coming out of what you're just describing. I was still seeing, matter of fact, at that 7 Seconds Doughboys show in '91, there was still skinheads showing up to that.
Oh, yeah.
But it was starting to get, by the mid '90s, that had started to weed out. These guys had grown up and, grew their hair out and got jobs or whatever, and life went on. But back then it was definitely sketchy. And John, I'm not the only one that feels this way about your band. Met a number of guys over the years. I don't know if you know Peter Naring. He played in a band called Ben Grimm. Hello,
Yeah.
Peter, if you're listening. James Menifee played in River City High and Fun Size.
Yeah.
We've talked about Doughboys for hours, me and these guys, as well as back in the day. You would find kinship with people through our shirts. And yes, I'm wearing a Doughboys shirt right now.
That's a good one too that you're wearing. That one was like designed by our roadie at the time, and that was like one that I think we started off printing those ones. Yeah, we started off printing those ones in the back of hotels. We used to bring the screens with us. I think by that time we weren't printing them anymore, but that was like the original OG shirt. In fact,
Yeah.
we're talking about Florida. There was also that tour we did in Florida real early on with the Descendants and Henry Rollins. Do you remember that tour?
I don't. Now, that would have been probably right before I heard you guys.
It was the Descendants, Henry Rollins, the Doughboys, and there was one other band, I want to say like Short Dogs Grow, or somebody else was on that. We did a bunch of shows in Florida, but those same skinheads were going to every show trying to beat Henry Rollins up. So he had security with him the whole tour. He had 2 security guards.
Jeez.
In Daytona Beach, we played a place that had chicken wire in front of the stage. And I did a movie with Henry a few years back, and when we started talking, that was the first thing he brought up, was like, remember when we played that show in Daytona Beach and had chicken wire in front of the stage? It was amazing because I remember he climbed to the top of it and poked his head through and said, I always knew they'd put me in a cage.
Well, you just reminded me of calling my father. I remember pumping coins into a payphone sometime around there, one of our first tours. He's like, how things going out there? I'm like, great, Dad. And he said, he would always say, you're not getting yourself in any precarious positions, are you? As I look out the window watching a drug deal, in Washington, D.C. or something. Like, no, Dad, we're fine, and thinking back to you guys, the same thing with you, witnessing someone like Henry Rollins have to have security. That's just insane, because that guy, he was a scrapper. He could take care of himself.
Oh, yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, but there was like a gang of them that were going, they had it in for him, man. I don't really know what the beef was, but they wanted to really kick his ass. Like it was a tense thing. Like, and they came, I think with that, it was Agent Orange, I think was the other band that was on those. It was Descendants, Agent Orange, Henry Rollins, and the Doughboys. And I think we did like 4 or 5 shows in Florida, and all of them, he had heavy security with him.
Jeez, that's crazy. Well, yeah, I was walking into a sociology class at the University of Florida. This would have been the fall of '94. And I see this guy walking towards me, and he's like pointing at me. And I pointed at him because he's wearing a Sam I Am shirt, and he points at my Doughboy shirt. It was Jason Black, the future bass player of Hot Water Music. So that's how you would connect with other people. He's, oh, you're wearing a Doughboy shirt. You're wearing a Sam I Am shirt. We must be long lost friends here. The song Shine is 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And John, if you could take us back to writing this track, was it specifically for Crush, or was it a holdout from the previous record?
No, that song was at the time we had still owed Restless a record, and we were really unhappy. We were fighting with them, and A&M had come to us and wanted to sign the band. And just by chance, by then we were really close friends with Mega City 4 and the Senseless Things. There's like a whole, we had our scene in America with, Chemical People and Descendants and Big Drill Car, and they had their same kind of scene over in Europe with Ned's Atomic Dustbin, Mega City 4, Senseless Things. So when we went over, they were super excited when we went over, and I became really close with Wiz. And so that year, I guess it was 92, Wiz came over and spent Christmas with me. He came and stayed with me for Christmas. And we wrote Fix Me and Shine when he stayed with me at Christmas that year.
Wow. And
like we were right after Christmas, we were going to do all these demos for A&M. And so me and Wiz wrote those right before we went in. And in fact, I've got the rights from Universal to finally put Crush out on vinyl. And so we're still going through it, but we're going to put a big box set together with all of those demos and like all kinds of stuff. So I've been working on trying to get that. I wanted to get it out for the 30th anniversary, but they've just been dragging their butts. So I'm still trying to get it all sorted.
When I first heard Shine, it was kind of, to me, as a huge fan, it was kind of a cross between Home Again and Happy Accidents. Happy Accidents got kind of like, almost like at points like an overblown rock record. You guys introduced a lot of different instrumentation on the album, and wow, Shine came back and it was kind of like, okay, here's the 4-piece punk band again.
Yeah.
Did it have to do with the kind of song Shine was, or did Daniel Ray talk to you? Did you speak to him about what kind of record you wanted to make?
No, what happened is that, when we did the first record with Krvak, we'd worked with Krvak before. And at that point, there was a lot of animosity between me and Asexuals. I didn't think about making that record. We just went in and made it. The second record we did with Bill and Stefan, we did that record in the middle of a tour and then continued on. When we got home, we got the mix and it sounded exactly like a Descendants record. So the label flew me back and me and Stefan remixed it and buried all the vocals, which never sounded great. So then the third record, we brought in this musical producer, Michael Wojawoda, he was like a Queen Street, Toronto art dude. And he came in and produced that, and he was a very musical guy. It wasn't right for the band. He'd ended up kind of becoming famous for doing the Bare Naked Ladies. But he produced it, which is why that record it's got a lot of piano on it, and it's very kind of overblown production on a very small budget. It is what it is. We were trying to, we were always trying to not make the same record. And at that point, I think we were trying to grow, but I don't know, that record just is a bit watered down. There's some okay songs on it, and then then we did When Up Turns to Down, and that we went in with Michael Wojawoda, and I remember at one point Jonathan had a drumstick and the guy was flipping out, and we fired him halfway through that recording of it. We brought Daniel Ray in to do Crush, who was the guy that did the Ramones, and
sure.
So it wasn't that we had really changed. It was more just the producers, we were a band that just toured nonstop. Making records was not something we really thought about. It was like, we got to make a new record. Okay, let's just write a bunch of songs, get back out on the road.
Yeah, well, this record, though, strikes me as, and do you recall, obviously, this is before digital recording for the most part. You guys went to tape. Were you all recording in the same room as once, and then just maybe doing a guitar solo overdub, backing vocal overdubs and lead vocals?
Yeah.
Or what was the process?
We went to New York to make that record. It was like, it was our first major label record. We had real money behind us. They put us up in this really fancy place in Manhattan, and we went to that Water Music in New Jersey and did all the bed tracks for it. And it was exactly that. We all, like we did with all of our records, we all played in the same room. We recorded everything right live off the floor, and then we went and basically replaced whatever, that record in particular. We went and, redid the guitars and all the vocals and stuff, but all the bass and drums were done live off the floor. But, at that time, there was still a lot of cutting tape, too. There was no computers. So
right.
There would be, cutting tape, and there'd be tape hanging all over the place. Kind of insane if you think about it right now, so you're paying thousands of dollars a day for these studios, you're recording these songs, and yet you got tape hanging all over the place with your drum tracks, which you're gluing together, how they could even tape those together, I still blows my mind.
It still blows my mind. I think about it sometimes, and I'm just like, how? I wouldn't have had the patience.
Yeah, no, it's insane. And then, the time we got to do Turn Me On, I think we did it with Ted Nicely. The first half we did with Ted Nicely, and he had 2 24 tracks going. So it was 48 tracks of tape.
Oh, wow.
Which was like,
wow.
Jesus, man.
At some point, it definitely becomes ridiculous. Well, yeah. The song's 2 minutes and 40 seconds. The intro is 4 bars of a single, slightly overdriven guitar, panned slight right, followed by 10 bars of full band. This arrangement's odd with the number of bars in certain places. I say it's odd. It's awesome. It doesn't really follow a verse, chorus, solo out. It's got some really cool things going on here. The drums, bass, and guitar, and that riff from the top panned off right, and another guitar come in for those 10 bars. The other guitar is panned off slight left, which I think would be you on that guitar. And then we get into verse 1.
Feel like I'm fading and
I'm not alone. I'm not alone. Feel like I'm buried and obscured beneath this non-impressionable.
It's blood and flesh and bone.
Is it blood and flesh and bone?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was rotting flesh and bone all these years, and online it says this non-impressionable.
No.
Okay, so it's blood, flesh, and bone.
Blood and flesh and bone, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Blood and flesh and bone. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm like a one in a million faces, bound to your front door. And then you call. And then you call.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's close, but not quite. Like one in all a million faces. I can't remember. It's close.
What's happening here lyrically?
Well, you want to know the deal with that song? So the deal with that song was there's this girl that grew up in Montreal, Melissa Oftermar, who ended up being in Hole.
Yeah.
Who was like a good friend of mine. And, we had kind of had a thing on and off. And when Wiz came to town, he completely fell in love with Melissa, like head over heels. And when we were writing that song, I knew that that's what he was thinking about. And so by the time that next verse comes in, that's why it's a lot more dark, because that was my dark part, because I was like, oh, dude. But it was a thing where when we were writing that song, I knew who he was writing about, but we never talked about it. But I knew what was going on at the time. So he starts off with those first few verses, and then the verses that I come in on are a lot more dark because I'm kind of burning him a little bit.
Man, again, we're talking 30 plus years here. I've been wondering forever, what is this song about? And you just tripped me out. I would never have pictured this was even really a love song almost, or a yearning for a woman. I had no idea. Verse 1 here sounds like we got doubled vocals. Was your vocal doubled here?
I can't remember, but I think generally we would only double the vocals in the chorus.
It sounds doubled here. You could definitely hear the double come in the chorus. It might be a chorus effect that they have on your vocal here.
I mean, we could have doubled it, the whole thing. I mean, I remember at the time there was a lot of at the time people thought of doubling up the vocals was a bit of selling it. It was a thing at the time, it was like giving your song to a beer commercial, same kind of deal. But, I think that right off the top, Daniel Ray, I think, had kind of picked that song out to be one of the featured songs. So it could have been doubled all the way up through the song. I don't quite remember.
Well, it sounds great. Drums, bass, that guitar panned off right is playing an arpeggiated part. The guitar off left, again, I believe that's probably your guitar, is playing a big eighth note, kind of like a crunchy rhythm palm mute. And the harmonies on the second line, I'm not alone, they're mixed with kind of like this unison vocal that's up an octave with the lead vocal. That's kind of like a Doughboys thing. Talk to me about that. I'm hearing interspersed harmonies with the unison, and it's really unique.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it, with everything with us, nothing was ever planned. It was always just rehearsed, and how it came out of our mouths was how it went down. So instead of sitting down and trying to work out like perfect harmonies, we just rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. And that's why, sometimes like the harmonies, it would be a harmony and then it would come into unison and then it would be up, and because it was literally just how we felt and what came out of our mouths and how we played it at the time. There was never any sit down and work out the harmonies.
And that's really interesting. And I would have believed that completely for your first independent records. But being on a major here, I just figured, I don't know, and especially as a kid, and Daniel Ray's a punk rock producer, but you guys are on a major at this point. And to me, it's like, oh, wow. And even to this day, I'm thinking, oh, they worked out all these parts and Daniel was probably there with harmonies. And it sounds like, no, this is what we sound like rehearsing in the garage. And he just put up some mics and recorded us.
Yeah, no, Daniel was really all about getting as much live off the floor as he could. When we went to do Crush, we did a lot of pre-production, which was kind of the first time we'd ever done pre-production for a record. And we went to New York 2 weeks ahead of time, and we rehearsed for 10 days at this place called Big Mike's, which is, I think, a kind of legendary place now on the Lower East Side. It's probably long gone. It's in the meatpacking district. Remember when we did that, on one side we had television was rehearsing for their big comeback show on one side, and Lenny Kravitz was on the other side.
Wow.
But we did a lot of pre-production for that, but the pre-production wasn't really rehearsing harmonies as much as it was just going through and tightening up the arrangements.
Hey everybody, don't go anywhere. We got lots more with John Kastner coming right up after a few words from our sponsors.
Looking to elevate your music career? DistroKid is a digital music distribution service that enables musicians to distribute their music to online stores and streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon, Tidal, and many more. DistroKid collects earnings and payments, sending them to you, the artist. With DistroKid, artists unlock a world of possibilities. From easily paying collaborators with splits, to securing your music with DistroLock, DistroKid covers all bases. Plus, you can promote your releases with Hyperfollow and create eye-catching visuals with a Spotify Canvas generator, all for free. But that's not all. Introducing the DistroKid app, now available on iOS and Android. Artists can manage their releases, view streaming stats, and withdraw earnings, all from the palm of their hand. And for those looking to perfect their sound, check out Mixia. With its simple interface and customizable mastering options, artists can make their music sound polished and professional within minutes. And don't forget about Instant Share, DistroKid's newest feature. Share large files securely with collaborators, producers, and more, ensuring your music streams at the highest quality. Ready to take your music to the next level? Download the DistroKid app and explore their suite of tools today. Plus, listeners can enjoy 30% off their first year by visiting distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes. That's distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes. Hey there, Chris DeMakes of podcast listeners. Ready to take your podcast experience to the next level? By signing up for the supporting cast at chrisdemakes.com, you not only ensure the continued production of our show, but also unlock exclusive perks. Subscribers receive a weekly bonus episode of our other podcast, The After Party, co-hosted by Chris Fafalius and myself. Many fans rave that The After Party is just as enjoyable as the main show. And with close to 200 music-centric episodes in the archive, there's a treasure trove of entertainment awaiting you. Thank you for tuning in and for your support in keeping the podcast going strong. Join us at chrisdemakes.com and let's keep the fun conversations going.
And now, back to the show.
Well, on the line, feel like I'm buried and obscured beneath blood and flesh and bone. Both guitars open up there and they kind of breathe here before tucking back down for the second half of verse 1. And to your point, you know, this definitely wasn't on Pro Tools. Nothing was copied and pasted. On the second half of verse 1, on the second I'm Not Alone, we don't get the whole line there. We just get Not Alone. On the first one, the harmony was on the whole thing. So I love that. Little nuances like that. Instrumentation here for the first couple lines is the same as the top, but the guitars open up again on the line. I'm like a 1 in a million faces bound to your front door. And then the drums go to a halftime feel for the last two lines. And then you call, and then we're in pre-chorus 1.
Make me feel so bright, make me feel brilliant and so white. It's like I shine, it's like I shine, it's like I shine.
Make me, I think this is the lyric, make me feel so bright, make me feel something so white. I don't know what you're saying there.
I can't fucking remember, dude.
John, it sounds like you're saying Breely Day. B-R-E-E-L-Y.
No, it's not
Breely
it.
Day. Obviously.
I mean, if I listen to it, I can tell, but I can't quite remember. It's quite, you almost have it there. There's a part there that you're missing. I can't remember what it is, though. It's been a long time.
Well, the last thing you say is definitely, it's like I shine.
Yeah.
I love that you're getting, it's a foreshadowing of the chorus. It's not the same melody as the chorus part, but it's the same lyric. It's like I shine. We get that 2 times. And then on the third time, and John, I never thought about this kind of stuff until I started doing this songwriting podcast and really looking and going, wow. You know, you can start a chorus lyric before the downbeat of the chorus, on the downbeat, or after. This happens 1 full bar before the chorus hits. We get a third. It's like I shine. And then the chorus 1 comes in. Second time, we get a harmony on Shine. The third one's just you, John. It's Like I Shine. And on the fourth time in the chorus, we get a harmony again on Shine before we go to an 8-bar full band reintro leading into verse 2.
Dark is how I feel, and to shine would be unreal. It's really no big deal, 'cause your eyes are bright enough. Your eyes are bright enough for everyone to shine.
Dull, dark is how I feel, and to shine would be unreal.
Yeah.
And it's really no big deal, because your eyes are bright enough. Your eyes are bright enough for everyone to shine.
Yeah, you can tell that the darker parts, that's more of my verse, right? Because the first two verses were kind of more whiz. I added a few lines in there, but by that point I knew what he was talking about.
Uh-huh.
So then I took that third verse and kind of brought it back to be more darker, because I thought it was becoming a bit too much.
So you twisted it dark, and by this point, does Wiz know that you know who the song's about? It's about Melissa?
Eventually it had kind of come out, because I know that Hole ended up doing Edgefest across Canada, like a 15-date tour across Canada, and they covered Shine every night.
Oh, wow.
And Courtney would introduce a song, that this was a song about wanting to fuck Melissa, and then they would play Shine.
Want to hear a Canadian song? This is a fucking hot song about Melissa Tamar.
And they did it every night in their set.
I'm going to have to go look that up. I never knew Hole covered Shine. That is so cool.
They covered it for a whole tour. They covered it.
I will be doing that as soon as we get done talking. I have to check that out. Well, we get harmonies, and this verse is probably my favorite of the song, John. We get harmonies on Dull, Dark is How I Feel, and To Shine Would Be Unreal. We get harmonies on Really No Big Deal, Bright Enough, and For Everyone to Shine. And from there, we go into an 8-bar guitar solo over that double time pre-chorus progression. It's awesome, because you don't go back to the pre-chorus in the song. You do, it's in the solos over it. So you still get that feel to set up for the final chorus here.
Everyone to shine.
And let's talk a little bit about Jonathan Cummins. He was kind of, I don't know, I kind of always saw him as, for lack of a better word, the hippie component in your band. He liked wah-wah, he liked a lot of stuff on his guitar, and he would have these guitar solos, but that to me is another reason of why I loved your band so much. That really stuck out as different. And how was that when it came time to record his solos? Did you guys give him free rein, or would you and Daniel talk to him about note choices or anything?
No. Everybody had free reign to do what they want, you know?
Yeah.
Jonathan, I think he was kind of looked at a bit more of the metal dude in the band. You know, when he first joined the band, one of our first tours with him in the band, our first show with him in the band was opening for Husker Du, on the last Husker Du tour. And then we went right down to Florida, and we played the Cameo Theater. I guess it was on that Descendants Agent Orange thing. That was his first run. And he had this like studded guitar strap, which I had a fire years ago in Toronto, lost a lot of my stuff. Somehow that guitar strap survived. And 2 summers ago, I was in Montreal, and I actually brought him back that strap. I gave it to him. It was all like burnt and stuff, but I found it and gave it to him. But it became a bone of contention with us, because it just having that big studded, everybody thought we got this metal dude, and it used to really piss me off. It was stupid by my part, but eventually he got rid of the strap, and but I found that strap and gave it to him just recently, which is kind of funny.
I guess metal would be the more appropriate word, Johnny. I said hippie. He had the long hair, and he kind of dressed a little different than the rest of the band at the time.
He was more tuned into the metal stuff than any of us were. You know, I mean,
yeah,
we were kind of all like hard rock kids that in the end of the 70s that went right into punk rock at the beginning of the 80s. But Jonathan kind of continued on into the Slayer world, which we were all bailed out into full punk rock by then, you know?
Right. Well, right after this guitar solo, which, by the way, was panned pretty hard right, we come in to the last chorus of the song, which this is crazy because, again, you get that lyric, it's like I shine, you get it in the pre-chorus, but this is only chorus 2 in the track. You get the it's like I shine before the downbeat of the chorus plus 7 more. In the end of the song, the band rings out. That intro guitar comes back in for a slow 8-bar fade out, along with the guitar panned off right is feeding back at that point. And then the song comes to a fade out end. When you heard the mix back from Shine, did everybody feel like this is the lead single, or it ended up being the opening track of the record, but was there a lot of excitement? Do you recall?
Yeah, I mean, when we mixed that record, we went to Vancouver and we mixed that record in Bryan Adams' basement, right?
Wow.
So Bryan Adams has a big studio in Vancouver now called The Warehouse, but before he owned The Warehouse, his studio was in his basement in North Vancouver. And he had a studio, his whole basement was converted into a studio with a big window that overlooked the bay. And he lived upstairs. So we'd come in and start working around 10 a.m. We'd park on the street and walk around his house and go underneath his house. We could hear him and his Danish girlfriend at the time, like fighting and stuff. And he would come down every day at around 11:30. He'd come down with the coffee and listen to what the mix was that we had done the day before. And he was super cool. But it was done in his basement, literally. And funny enough, behind the board, he had a big SSL. There was a little door, and we could crawl through this door, and it was all fireproofed. And it was just packed full of like 100 guitars and 100 gold records. Like the guy had so many gold records from Tina Turner and everything, and none of them were on the wall. He had hockey stuff on the wall, and all of his gold records were just thrown in the corner of this room.
That's so funny you say that. I've been to a couple of my rock star buddies' houses with gold records. Saying, most of them don't flaunt it. It's shoved away somewhere.
Yeah,
it's interesting how that happens.
Yeah, the only gold. I have a few gold records, and mine are in the bathroom.
The label A&M, which labels were weird back then because you guys were actually signed to A&M Canada.
No, it was a co-venture deal. So we were signed to.
Was it? Okay.
We were signed to half America, half Canada. That was the whole thing, was we wouldn't sign a Canadian deal. So it was signed half in Canada and half in America. And that record did well. I mean, it went gold in Canada. It did really well in Europe. And it did well in America. It sold quite a few records. But it was right before Green Day kind of happened. And
I know.
Then by the time Green Day happened, I got flown down to America. And David Anderley, who was running A&M at the time, apologized to me, saying that we should have seen more about this record, what's going on in music. And he it was the weirdest thing. It was at the time his office was in the A&M studios off La Brea, and he had a huge pterodactyl bird hanging over. It was in the old soundstage where they shot Superman. It was like right out of a movie. His desk was in the middle with just one light and this huge pterodactyl. But yeah, and they had somehow felt like they had messed up and didn't put enough into that record once they saw Green Day come along. I was like, whatever, dude. Fuck, who cares? Let's move on and make another record,
Yeah, it's really, really all you can do at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, this has been... I've been pacing all morning. I've been excited about this. I won't ever tell you again, probably as your friend, how much I love your band. I did it today. I told you years ago, whether you remember or not, it's here nor there. But Doughboys are my favorite band, man. Thank you for sitting in today. And before we break, would you like to leave the listeners with? What's coming up in the world of John Kastner?
You told me that before, and I appreciate it. And I mean, I kind of feel like, after you told me that 20 years ago. We kind of moved on as friends back then.
I know this was more for the listeners, but what I was saying at the end here is what's coming up in the world of John Kastner. What do you got coming up you like to leave everybody with?
Oh man, I got a bunch of kids, so I'm just trying to make sure that they could eat.
Yes.
I manage a bunch of bands. I own Cobra Side, which is I put vinyl in all the record stores in America. And I guess the thing, if they're musically, I still get together with the Asexuals. The Asexuals is a funny thing because it's, that we started that band in grade 7. It's still the same 4 guys.
I love that.
And every few years we'll get together and do a festival or do something. And man, like we play better than ever, and we have so much fun. Like the rehearsing is just as much fun as the shows, and the shows are always great and really well attended. And we've all been talking about wanting to make one more record with the same 4 guys before we all turn 60. So we have a few more years still, but that's the one thing that we've been talking about, is trying to make one more Asexuals record before we all turn 60. So we'll see if we pull it off or not. And other than that, we're going to put it a Crush on vinyl, like as a box set. We're going to do the same thing with Whatever. We're probably going to eventually kind of reissue all the records on big expanded box sets and stuff. So down the road, those will all kind of happen.
And I have to ask, anything Doughboys besides the re-release of the records? Any shows planned?
Nah, we did that last run of shows we did like 10 years ago or whatever with the Foo Fighters. That was the Foo Fighters and Gus Brandt, another Floridian.
Yeah.
That kind of made it happen, him and Elliot Lefko. And those were great. There was some of the same animosities that made us not a band were kind of still there.
Yeah.
So I think after doing these shows, although it was a great time, I think, when we did those shows, we got tons of offers from all over the world to go do festivals and go do cool stuff. But there was just some of the same problems, and we just decided to let it go. Paul, our drummer, he's like the stage manager for Coldplay, so he's a super busy guy. And, Jonathan has his little bands. I live in Los Angeles, so, never say never, but who knows, man,
Understood. Well, hey, man, thanks for carving out some time for me today. It means the world to me.
Of course, man.
Hey, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed that conversation with John Kastner. But don't go anywhere. We got lots more Chris DeMakes a podcast coming right up after a few words from our sponsors.
Hey, this is Steve Choi, host of the Musicians Guild podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media podcast network. Within the 4 walls of the Musicians Guild, we'll be discussing the habits, idiosyncrasies, experiences, and general psychology of my friends and peers, all involved with music in various capacities. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, friends, have you been loving Chris DeMakes a podcast? Well, spread the love by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't hesitate to share what you enjoy about the show in an actual written review on Apple Podcasts. Not only does it help more people discover us, but we often read reviews in the rap segment of the show. It's a quick, cost-free way to support us and takes just a minute of your time. Your reviews mean the world to us and help us keep the podcast thriving. Thank you for being a listener, and thank you for being a friend.
As we near the end of the show, here's a band you might not know.
Welcome to this week's Band You Might Not Know. If you'd like your band to be considered for Chris DeMakes a podcast, email your best song via MP3 only and a short bio to bandyoumightnotknow@gmail.com. This week's featured artist is Guitar Fire 100, a pop-punk band from Montreal, Quebec. It's so fitting that this came across the desk here at Chris DeMakes a podcast. Perfect timing to go with this Doughboys episode, which, by the way, I can hear a little Doughboys in Guitar Fire 100 sound. Here's a snippet of their song, As Long As I'm Alive.
As long as I'm alive, I take another breath. Forget, whoa, I'm alive, I take another breath. Forget, whoa, forget.
wrap with Chris and Chris.
So, Chris, it's not every day that we have someone from your favorite band of all time on the podcast. So today was kind of special.
There you go. They were my band. They were the band that only a few people knew, that first punk band that you gravitate towards. And someone asked me the other day, what's your favorite band? And it's been a long time. I said, the Doughboys. I'm like, who's that? And I educated them on who they were. I'll always have a special place in my heart for this band.
Hey, I know I've heard you talk about this before in episodes, and we probably talked about it on the after party. I can't believe what an issue skinheads were at Florida shows back in the day. That's so weird.
So weird. I talked about this at the museum too. There's a big mural, a picture of HR from Bad Brains, and just thinking back at these knuckleheads, spewing this hateful rhetoric and going to shows back in the day. Some of them were Bad Brains fans that ended up at a Bad Brains show and looked on stage and went, what? Those are the guys in one of my favorite bands. Again, you didn't have the pictures. Magazines weren't like they are today, certainly for punk rock. And it was a crappy place for a long time. And again, by the time we came along, 92, a lot of that was filtered out. It was still a thing, but by the mid to late 90s, it was past. Thank goodness.
Hopefully we can get to a day where it doesn't exist whatsoever. Would you, as a guy who has loved this song and this band for so long, have ever guessed that this song that you love was at least partially inspired by Melissa Oftermar, the bassist from Hole? Would you have guessed that?
No, I didn't know anything about what this song could be about. If anything, I thought it was about race, because they had a song called White Sister on Home Again that I believe dealt with racial issues. And I don't know, there was just some stuff in here that to me lyrically alluded to that. But I don't know where they went with this lyrically. It was completely left to center. I had no idea. And as I said to John, I was giddy to talk to him about it. It had been 31 years coming.
Yeah. And it's pretty funny that Hole covered the song on tour. That's wild. This song's about our bassist.
Yeah, especially how Courtney put it, right? When she would tell the audience.
Oh, right. Yeah, for sure. And the album was mixed in Bryan Adams' basement. I'm convinced that every Canadian musician
knows Bryan Adams.
Knows Bryan Adams, or all know each other in one way or another. Have worked with each other. That's wild.
Something I didn't tell John. I meant to remind him about this. I think every Canadian musician knows Rush as well. I was living down in Ybor City in Tampa, Chris. This was around 2005 or 6, and evidently Alex Lifeson, the guitar player from Rush, and Brian Johnson from AC/DC, and I knew Brian lived in Sarasota, but they were flipping timeshares down there or investing in them at some point. And Kastner calls me one day out of the blue. I'm like, hello? He's like, hey man, don't you live down in Tampa, Sarasota area? I said, yeah. He's like, yeah, Alex just called me, man. Can you get him any weed? And I was like, this is the guitar player from Rush. He's reaching out to the guy from Less Than Jake for weed in Florida. I was like, what? And I said, yeah, let me see what I can do. And then John ended up calling me back and said he wasn't going to be in Florida that week, but I would have gladly taken some weed to Alex Lifeson.
That's so funny. And dude, it's also so funny. I've literally seen this as well. These people that have gold and platinum records, just resting on the floor against the wall, not even hung up. If I had one of those things, it would be the centerpiece of my house. I swear.
Yeah, I would think I would hang them up. Those are your most, I don't know. They're adult trophies, Chris. It's like the bowling trophy. It's like the soccer trophy when you're a kid. I don't know. I don't think I'd use them from a bragging standpoint, but I'd be proud.
Proud. That's all I mean. But I thought this was a really fun episode, man. And I love seeing you geek out like a teenager over a band you love and a songwriter that you think's awesome. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I like the approach that Daniel Ray, the producer, took with the band. You could tell they did pre-production, they rehearsed. He threw up some mics and recorded them. Minimal overdubs. Right. And I love that. I'd love to someday get back to recording like that. It's hard to go back like that. It's hard to go in reverse and be a minimalist. But this was I was as giddy and excited for this episode as I was some of our huge stars that we've had here on Chris DeMakes a Podcast, just because they're my favorite band, and I just think it's so cool. And I'll tell you what else I think is cool, Chris.
I had a segue ready to go.
Let's hear your segue. Let's hear it.
I was going to say, speaking of stars, if you want to leave us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd appreciate it. Chris, I have a new review that someone left us on Apple Podcasts that I wanted to read to you.
I would love to hear it. Come on.
I want to make your day.
All right.
And hopefully this makes Jimmo70's day, who left us 5 stars and said he titled his review Something for All Music Lovers. And this is what he wrote. Everyone likes music, right? This podcast has something for everyone who loves music. Chris DeMakes provides an entertaining and in-depth conversation with a musician about a chosen song every single stinking week. That alone is amazing, but Chris and producer extraordinaire, Chris Fafalius, make it a compelling listen every single week as well. I mean, check out the roster of guests and songs covered. Huey Lewis, Brian Fallon of Gaslight Anthem, and just recently, Zach Barnett of American Authors discussing Best Day of My Life, to name a very few. Come on! I have also discovered a lot of new music through this podcast and has helped me appreciate the many elements that can make a song great. Hats off to Chris and Chris.
Well, thank you. Was it John 1970? What was it?
Close. Jimmo70.
Jimmo!
I want to take our hats off to Jimmo.
Jimmo, thank you very much for that review. Yes, head over to Apple and Spotify. Leave us that 5-star review. Give us give us some more accolades. We love it. We love we love hearing how cool we are. And I'm gonna tell you how cool you are, Chris. You're the one for everybody listening. Chris is the one that tightens these up. He makes me sound good. He takes out my ums and ahs and all my bad journalistic speech. He tightens it up. He puts the song clips in. So I'm gonna give you a little one-person clap here. Thank you so much. And don't forget to join the Chris DeMakes a Podcast Facebook group and give us a follow on our Instagram page. Chris puts up a lot of cool stuff there. And I got to talk about my favorite band from Montreal, Quebec, all the way up in Canada, the Doughboys. I want to thank this week's guest, John Kastner, for sitting in with us. And we'll see you next week.
One Hit Thunder is a podcast where we both celebrate and have a good laugh about bands and artists that had just one hit that we all know. Each week, we're joined by a guest from the world of music or comedy to learn more than you ever thought you would about some songs that you can't forget. And we decide if they brought the one-hit thunder or were nothing more than a one-hit blunder. Look, if you listen to the show, you're probably going to laugh, and I guarantee you're going to crush next time the bar has music trivia. Tag Team, Jane Child, Meredith Brooks, Looking Glass, Sean Mullins, Eiffel 65, EMF, Crash Test Dummies, Crazy Town, Chumbawamba. We have hundreds of episodes in our back catalog and a new episode each week, so pass the Dutchie, make sure you're connected, and subscribe to One Hit Thunder wherever you get your pods.
Hi, this is Chad Nicefield.
And this is Justin Press.
We're the host of Making Waves, the Shiprock podcast, a part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. We're inviting you to sail away with us on an epic journey in musical enlightenment. Every week, we bring you only the best artists in rock music and discuss everything from the cruise, to the stage, to the saga of being a professional recording artist. We'll have lots of special guests along the way, so tune in every week.
Your stateroom is available every Monday morning, so welcome aboard.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.